I want to do this podcast because God is doing a huge thing in our church. You know, we're moving somewhere. We're not really sure 100% where it's going. It's kind of scary. Mm-hmm. It's risky.
And there's definitely someone out in front who we're following.
I love that God is up to things today that are new to us. And that's the cool part of what's happening. And we hope that this podcast stirs people. I just want people to know the story. That's what really matters.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what we're going to invite people into.
I think that's the great part about this. It's not just about communication of some new idea. I think it really cuts to the heart of what it means to be a follower of Jesus and to be in a community of followers of Jesus. So.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Chris Macky here. Welcome to VCCLife, a podcast for and by the Vineyard Community Church in St. Louis, Missouri. This podcast is a space for a church in transition. As we navigate change, we believe God is calling us into something new, a fresh way of thinking about faith, community, and what it means to be the church. We're leaning in, listening, and experimenting with what it looks like for Jesus to lead us. Join us as we wrestle, reflect, and step forward together into God's unfolding story. So I want to start with why we're doing this, like the purpose behind this podcast. And here's some notes that I took as based on conversations that you and I have had and I've had with other people. I want to do this podcast because God is doing a huge thing in our church. It's like fundamental huge, like seismic. This is my perspective, right? I just think it's huge. And how we and I view like the identity, the purpose, the mission of the church. Not to mention the leadership approach, because that's kind of the instigating incident, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. David announcing his retirement a few years ago. But anyway, I feel like very few people in our church know about this. Mm-hmm. Obviously, people know about what's happening, like the details, right? The information. But I don't think a lot of them know like what God is up to. Mm-hmm. And that's the cool part of what's happening. Mm-hmm. It's not just, I don't want to say just because it is a big deal that our senior pastor is retiring, but you know, it's more than that.
Right.
And it's not just how are we going to like figure this out with a new senior pastor. We believe, you guys in leadership believe God is leading us to do something completely different. Maybe completely is too strong, but different than what we've done before. Yeah, in leadership. So I just want people to know the story. Yeah. You know, I think it's a great story after talking with you and a lot of the other leaders. So I gave myself a few minutes to think about an analogy. It's like, you know, the parents are in the front seat of the car and they're driving to this unknown new place that they've never been to before. They have some directions that aren't 100% clear.
Yeah.
They're too far along to turn around now.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Is this resonating a little bit?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then both of the parents are looking at each other, thinking to themselves without speaking, I sure hope we're headed in the right direction. Right. Because I'm not sure at this moment. And maybe it's dark outside and you can't really see and there aren't many other cars around and all of that. And the parents are feeling a little uneasy about the whole situation, but still feeling like they're going in the right direction and excited about the potential and the possibility. And they keep going because they're committed to it and they're hopeful and they get a sense that there's some encouragement to keep going. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the kids are in the back seat. You see where I'm going with this?
Where
the kids are the kids are in the back seat just kind of looking out the window or, you know, what am I thinking? They're on their devices, of course. Sure. One might say, hey, when are we going to get there? Just kind of oblivious, like, it's been a while. Are we going to get there soon? Doesn't really look out to see that it's dark and there's no other cars around. Someone else might say, you know, do you guys know where you're going? Are you sure we're going in the right direction? To which the parents would say, oh yeah. We're going in the right direction. So anyway, that's the analogy that I thought of. I'm sure there's a better one that we can think of later, but you know, we're moving somewhere. We're not really sure 100% where it's going. Mm-hmm. We obviously feel encouraged. We feel God obviously leading us in many different ways and lots of signs of that encouragement. But it's kind of scary. Mm-hmm. It's risky. Mm-hmm. It really is dark in many ways, like dark sight-wise. You know, you can't really see where we're going. And not to say our church is a bunch of kids, but metaphorically speaking, there are a lot of people that are just along for the ride. Mm-hmm. And that's good. That's okay. This is a great church to be on the ride with. Yeah. And in a sense, they're just trusting the parents in the front seat. Mm-hmm. It kind of looks like we're lost. You know, the kids might look, but my parents are right there. Yeah. They're driving.
Yeah.
So I'm okay. That's what I get a sense of in our church, is that there are a lot of people who are thinking, I wonder where this is going to go, or I wonder when we're going to get there.
Yeah.
But I trust the leadership.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are your thoughts as I share those things about why we're doing this podcast? And
I think the experience of both the parents and we'll say everyone else along for the ride.
Yes.
Could be aunts and uncles.
It could be, yes.
Who knows? But,
very responsible adults.
Yeah, but they're, the experience on both sides of that is probably resonates. I think the one thing I was thinking was like, it does not feel like we just have a sort of a vague sense that we're following. It feels like it's dark, but there's always just enough light in front of us that we know we're following that. So in some senses, we're not stumbling around.
Right. The headlights are still working, and there's still a road.
And there's a road, and there's there's definitely someone out in front who we're following.
Yeah.
But it is dark, and it's hard to know where it's going exactly.
Yeah.
You don't have a clear destination in mind, certainly not at the beginning. And I think generally the feeling that you're capturing in that analogy, I think is pretty accurate. So,
Yeah, so for me, this podcast is basically just inviting people to be more engaged.
Mm-hmm.
What is God doing, and how can we get involved?
Yeah.
Not just so they're informed or they can be supportive. It is that, and we can be praying for leaders and all of that, which this church just does naturally, But I think as we get more into this, God is doing something that is inviting the whole church to be a part of a new way of doing church.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
New to us, not new to God, of course, or the kingdom.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the great part about this. It's not just about communication of some new idea. I mean, I think it really cuts to the heart of what it means to be a follower of Jesus and to be in a community of followers of Jesus. So, it is an everyone type of thing for sure.
Yeah. So this podcast is hopefully a tool that we can use to just share what God is doing in people's lives and in the leaders' lives, people who are involved in this transition. And I know I personally have had many conversations with you and with other leaders in the church that I really wish I could have recorded in a moment. Like, divinely inspired, you should record this, and, put my phone on the table. Because they're just so encouraging and challenging to me. And I love that God is up to things today that are new to us, and He invites us into them. And I just think this is really big and really good, And so that's my hope for this podcast, is that we have a bunch of conversations.
Yeah.
That I have conversations with you and with other leaders, and we hear their stories about what God is up to in this transition, a little bit of the how, a little bit of the what you're experiencing in that, but mainly like what's God doing in you and in the people around you during this transition period, because that's what really matters.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're going to invite people into. So with that said, vision for the podcast. All of those things we just said, we could do in lots of different ways.
Right.
Okay. So why a podcast? Why don't you share? You approached me about doing a podcast.
Right. Yeah. I think just when I was contemplating the various avenues that we have established for speaking with our church family here, obviously a primary one is Sunday mornings. And so, we've tried to be at least somewhat intentional about dropping little things in here and there on Sunday mornings, but fundamentally it's not really what Sunday morning is for, right? Sunday morning is for, being able to preach the word and being, it's a wide open space. Anybody can walk in. And we're carrying these messages, these series across the line. It's just not a primary space for being able to talk about, these things of transition and what we're going through as a church, at least not in the level of depth that we would want.
Right.
And it's a short level, time period too. Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's the level. It's like you're talking about what God's doing on Sundays, obviously.
Yeah.
But
it's like up here, and it's not, you can only cover so much. And then even thinking about like, we've done in the past, we've done, sort of all church meetings and stuff. And, we love doing those. They're usually really fun. We eat together, and
they are.
Kids
we put
are
the couches
around.
in there. And
there's lots of snacks, all that stuff. Dinner even.
Yeah.
But even there, it's like when you're thinking about communicating or being able to really kind of immerse yourself in a story, it's like that, again, it's pretty limited, and it didn't feel like that was the right venue for that either. So I just, for myself, I just know I've benefited a lot from various podcasts, sort of this format that are kind of long form, that are story oriented with real people. We're not trying to impress anybody. It's just like talking about what, here's what happened. Right. And I've definitely, met God through those types of podcasts. And, that's kind of what got me thinking, well, maybe that's what we could use here in this situation. And maybe that could be a good format for us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, great. So this, we've talked a little bit, obviously, before this in the last few weeks. So this podcast is going to be people-centered, right? And so we want this to be conversational, relational, really asking the people who are involved in the transition and have been involved in some of these discernment teams, discernment groups. We've hired a consultant, and so there are people who have interacted with him and with some materials. And so we want to talk to those folks and just have a conversation about what God is doing in them in story form.
Exactly.
Where did it start? What was God doing at this point? Where is it going? Those kinds of things. So
I think, I think eventually there'll be, we want there to be places where we can teach and learn more of the mechanics of things that we've been through. But in this format, though, it's like you said, it does feel like this is an opportunity for it to be people-centric and story-oriented. So in this season of the podcast, we're not going to be teaching people things like technical things like, here's how you do this, or, we as a discernment group learned how to discern this way. Here are the steps. We're not going to do that necessarily kind of academically. But we are just going to talk about people's experiences in those things to get the story out. And what I think is going to happen is that as we listen to all these stories, there will be some coalescing. And it's going to help our church discern through this podcast. Yeah, I think so.
Because some people are going to hear, this theme is going to come out, and they're going to hear that over and over again. And other people are going to hear, another theme that really sticks out to them. And I feel like that's going to be a way that God stirs in them what he's doing. That's going to be good.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. And so I think in the end, we hope that this podcast stirs people to enter into the new and fascinating and risky and all of the other, adjectives, this story that God is writing in and through the people of VCC.
Yeah.